Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Citizens Advice East Herts AGM this evening, to those of you here in person and to those of you joining us digitally. Our AGM last year was the first conducted entirely remotely. This year we find ourselves in a hybrid mode, a mixture of analogue and digital, which is an apt representation of the world that we appear to be living in today. I say appear because, as one of my old bosses used to say, the real world is analogue. The real world is analogue. We might be meeting remotely tonight, but we're all humans who take up space in the real world, who have problems we'd rather not have, and who need to talk to other people. None of us has changed in that respect. We've just got more ways of talking to each other, to other humans now. And the same is true of our organisation, Citizens Advice East Herts. In Citizens Advice nationally, the phone has now overtaken face-to-face as the primary means of communication with clients. It took 80 years for the phone to supplant face-to-face and 18 months for the phone itself to be just another channel alongside instant messaging, chat, video, text, and still face-to-face. The pace of change has been giddying sometimes. And at our AGM, we need to look back and take stock to understand how far we've come and what we've achieved. So I've just picked out a few things. Laura will be doing the same thing a bit later on. In 2021, we helped 8,714 people, up 34% from the previous year. That's over a third more people. And we expect this to increase again in 21-22. For every pound invested in us, we generated £16.36 in income gains for clients through benefits awarded, debts written off, and consumer problems resolved, and £37.84 in public value. We recently secured £122,148 from the National Lottery Community Fund. We raised over £5,000 from community fundraising last year, a substantial part of which was from the Secret Society of Hartford Crafters. Yesterday, our annual leadership assessment, which is our annual kind of internal quality audit, our evaluator, who is not given to hyperbole, I think we could agree on that, Laura, described us as a high-performing organisation and stupendous. I'm proud to be the chair of such a professional organisation, where we know for sure we're making a measurable difference in our community. A huge thank you to all the team, to paid staff, and particularly to our amazing volunteers who are the beating heart of our organisation. And to our partners and funders, all who make us stupendous. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Just a couple of bits of formal business before I hand over to Laura for the annual report summary. Firstly, just to say, and I'm pleased and relieved to say that we are quorate this evening for the purposes of the AGM, and I've been handed a list of apologies, which we'll take as read, Mr. Chairman, but they will go on the minutes. The next item on the agenda was just to approve the minutes of the last annual general meeting, held a year to the day, by the looks of things, on 3rd of November 2020. This was sent with the members' pack that hopefully the members received by email a few weeks ago. If anyone's got any queries or comments on them, I'm more than happy to take those. Otherwise, those members that were present last year at the AGM, if they would be happy just to raise their hand to say they have formally approved the AGM minutes, I'd be very grateful. So, right, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll just take the AGM minutes as approved.
Approved.
Thank you very much. I will now hand over to Laura, please, for the next segment, which is the annual report.
Thank you. When I forget to change the slides, it's a when, not if. Can somebody just raise their hand and tell me to focus on what I'm doing? Because I get a bit carried away. So thank you to everybody that's here physically in the Charis Centre in Bishop Stortford. And I never thought I'd be so excited to say that and look at people's faces and to have food with each other and quite literally break bread, and it's been lovely to be here. So thank you for the people that are physically here, and thank you to our supermarket sponsors, but thank you to people over there, people digitally, who are hopefully listening to us from the comforts of their sofas. It makes you really feel like you're doing something high-tech, and I'm sure we're not, but it feels high-tech to me. So I'm going to just give a very brief overview of who we are, and a lot of the information is in the annual report, which many of you have seen already. So we are a local independent charity. We are mainly volunteer-run, and we've been going in some form for 80 years. Our first branch was in Ware in 1940, and it was some people got together, women got together to help others with housing issues and how to access benefits. I'm sure they didn't call it that. So actually those issues haven't changed that much. I think how we delivered it, I'm not sure we actually were in a horse box, but some people across the country were in horse boxes. I don't think we ever were in a horse box. I think we were in a caravan once, weren't we, Carolyn? I think at some point there was I think there was a caravan at some point in our history.
We were in a church as well.
I remember the church days. We provide free, independent and confidential advice on any subject. But we want to empower people so they're able to help themselves to the extent of their ability. In addition to giving advice, we've got a small research and campaigns team that looks at local trends and issues and helps us campaign for change at a local and a national level. Currently, we have 20 paid members of staff, many of whom started as volunteers, and 82 volunteers. Including 34 advisors and 26 trainees. As you can imagine, those numbers fluctuate by day, but that's when I wrote this presentation, that was actually true. Our volunteer advisors train for about a year, but on average stay for about 11 years. And we were chatting to Mark, who's one of our volunteer advisors, earlier today, and he's been with us since 2012. And Ken Crofton said, but you know, that's not 11 years, isn't it? He said, well, I'm not going anywhere yet. So our vision is to meet client needs now and in the future. We want to provide the advice people need for the problems that they face. And we want to improve the policies and practices that affect people's lives. And like any vision, that's really not going to change. But we have set ourselves 3 strategic objectives for the next few years. And they're the ones that the trustees, myself and the senior leadership team are working hard to try and achieve. And the first one of these, I hope you like the new icons. We're working on them. We've got a volunteer who's kindly put the icons together, and we're still working on getting that right. So this is work in progress. It's work in progress. Monica's already given her feedback, as you can imagine, but it's work in progress. So our first objective is to meet client access needs. And we've really extended how we give the routes of accessing our advice during COVID. But we want to understand how people want to access our services. And at the moment, we've got an access survey still open. We did one last year, where we ask non-clients, because if you ask people that are already accessing your service how they want to access your service, they'll tell you So we're asking people that don't. So we really want to understand those access needs. Our staff and our volunteers, we're working in a blended way, so at home, but also in physical spaces as well, to allow more flexibility and cover more hours and days. We want to meet our client advice needs, and that involves increasing the number and range of specialist advisors to cover the growing complexity in our cases. And we are noticing that cases are getting more complex. Each client is on average having more issues, which is almost an indicator of the complexity of each client's case going forward. We want to make sure we've got an adequate number of new volunteer generalist advisors, but also to retain and develop our existing volunteer advisors. And we want to ensure that the thing that holds it together, which is our advice supervisors, advice session supervisors, that we've got adequate supervision so that they can look after those sessions, but also case check and check that quality never is compromised. And the third area is really important, is how do we actively reach out to people who need a more tailored service? So we know that majority of people can access our service by telephone or digitally. We know that, it suits them. But there's a minority that can't. And so we have to go and meet them. We have to go and find them and work with them. And the way that we're doing that is working in partnership with our local partners. We've got Frontline, which I'll talk throughout the presentation. It's a digital tool. It's the way that us as partners can refer to each other and refer clients safely and securely and swiftly to each other. And I have to say, I love it. It's really, really good. I love it. I don't use it. Karen loves it and she does use it, so that's probably more important. We want to make sure that we're in the spaces where clients are. So we want to be in the community. And I keep thinking of this language of almost being knitted into the community. So almost kind of like we're seen as theirs in that community space. So that might be, we're just about, I think today or this week was our first session in Hertford Seal. And there's a community space there owned by Network Homes. And we're in that space. And it's a really, I mean, you can't be a better position between Simmons the Bakers and, you know, the post office and the fish and chip shop. It's like, hello, you know, we're in there. So that's what we want to be. We're also working with Saul Bridgeworth as well about how are we where our people are. We want to do things like be on the high street in a slightly different way. So for the past few months, we've been in Jackson Square. Anybody that knows it, the old Argos unit. It's going to be TK Maxx, very excited. But at the moment it's empty and we're in there just so that passers-by can pop in and get information. And we want to communicate to local people how we can access our services. So we've been working really hard with our local partners, people like Paul from Bishop's, the Stortford Independent, and how do we get our messages across? But rather than just one way, it's a partnership, it's a two-way thing. How do we work with each other? I said to myself, don't go on at this bit because it's a bit boring, so I will move on. Right, so I'm not going to talk through this because it's in the annual report, and Tony's already covered quite a lot of it. We've been working really hard to meet that demand that we faced over COVID, and there was a higher demand in COVID. However, it hasn't gone away. It's changed slightly in shape, but it hasn't gone away. Demand was up by a third. Is that because we added in different access routes? Probably part of that. Is it because more people needed help? Probably. We had change in demographics, so we saw younger people, more younger people came forth. Again, is that some of the access routes, or was it because they were more affected by COVID? We're here for everyone, but the people that we most help are they're more likely to be on low incomes than the UK average, and they're more likely to be disabled or have a long-term health condition. And a third of our clients come from the 5 most deprived wards of East Herts. And I think COVID has shown all of us how anyone can fall vulnerable to sudden life changes, and I think we're more acutely aware of that. But we do know that COVID disproportionately affected those who already were struggling for whatever reasons. There was a typo here, so thanks, James, for changing my typo. Thank you for that. So last year, normally the top issues never change. Normally about a third of them are benefits and tax credits, about 12% debt, and 10% of the others. Last year we saw a real change in the proportion of issues coming to us. So we still saw a lot of benefits. So, you know, still a third of our issues are about benefits. But employment went up significantly. When you think about what happened with COVID, it's not a surprise. This year we're seeing that drop off back to more normal rates. Housing went up significantly, and that hasn't dropped off. That is still growing. And then debt actually dropped off, but if you think, well, if proportions of other ones are going up, something's got to drop off. But a lot of that is about government support mechanisms that were in place at the time. I don't know whether you can see that because the light I'll read it to you. I've got my contact lenses, so I can't read it very well. 1 in 6 clients who contacted us was about an employment query last year, and it shows that impact that COVID had on local people. And 1 in 2 people that sought advice on housing benefit had a long-term health condition or disability. and Ballo and I working on equality issues, and we're really going to really start drilling down on disability, because there's more work to do understanding our clients who are disabled, who have got a long-term health condition. And about a third of the clients who we saw about benefits needed help with claiming universal credit. So COVID had a huge impact on how we delivered our services. Like many others, we quickly moved to remote service. I remember the first day, and I think I rang Carolyn and said, Carolyn, we're going to do this. She went, right, okay. And I said, shall we try and make it work? She went, right, yes, okay. Are we going to, will this work? I don't know. We were kind of like just laughing hysterically on that first day, but we did make it work, didn't we? You know, and it did, we made it work. We made it work quickly. And that is, I mean, I've never seen team spirit like it, I have to be honest, and people just amazing. Oh, I'm getting a bit emotional now. But we're going to keep it. We're going to keep that remote working, that working from home. But we will retain face-to-face for people that need it. And that's really important, because some people can't get their problems solved in that way. Data shows that the financial impact of COVID overwhelmingly concentrated on the vulnerable. So those who have health risks, on young people, on people in insecure work. And with government support coming to an end, we're seeing demand continue to grow and issues becoming more complex. And we calculated, thanks to Maxine, I'm not sure where Maxine is, that 1 in 10 of our clients require ongoing casework. And that feels, we've never done that calculation, it feels much higher than it used to. So how are we going to meet that need? We've led the development alongside the CVS, and it's great to see Ian here, of the Frontline, East Herts Frontline, and it's a digital way of referring clients to each other, and it's brilliant. So it's great to work in partnership with the CVS and Age Concern in Bishop Stortford as well on that. This is from a volunteer advisor. These quotes and these stories, they're not made up, they're real. We've spoken to people who have never used Citizens Advice before, never claimed benefits, and have had a steady income for years. Suddenly they feel as if the rug's been pulled from under them and they don't know what to do. We're here to listen, support, and then help them find a way forward. And it's always rewarding when you hear the relief in someone's voice at the end of a call. 50% of our clients said that their issue was affected by the pandemic. And many of those people that we helped had never needed service, needed our service before. 1 in 6 clients came to us with an employment issue, and we saw 60% increase in clients seeking advice about housing. I'm not going to do doom and gloom, this is my last bit, but the latest economic forecast from the British Chamber of Commerce notes that in the UK is set for an uneven economic recovery and an uncertain one, and I don't think anybody would like to predict what's going to happen. Despite record GDP growth, the unemployment rate is expected to peak at 6% in Q4 of this year, but we just don't know, and that's the truth. Youth unemployment is expected to lag behind the wider recovery, but we do expect demand for our services to continue to grow, as those financial impacts and implications are felt. And it's clear that for many people, there won't be a simple return back to what they were doing pre-pandemic in March 2020. And many of those will rely on support, like ourselves, but our other partners in East Herts, to find a way forward. We make a difference. One quote, I would not have been able to have coped with the last year without the help of Citizens Advice. Thank you for giving me resources, guidance, and above all, hope. And I love that word. I love that word, hope. 9 in 10 said our advice helped them move forward. 6 in 10 felt less stressed, depressed, or anxious. So we make a difference to people's mental health. And 2 in 5 had a more secure housing situation. But it's more than stats, it's more than figures. Our advisors deal with people's lives. I'm going to just talk you through two of the real life stories, but we've changed their names. So our first one is Craig. Craig had rent arrears as a result of losing 2 jobs as a warehouse and door supervisor due to the lockdowns. He was facing eviction and had over £6,000 in debt. We identified he could claim council tax reduction and offered suggestions for reducing his expenditure. We ensured the Housing Association's action on eviction was suspended and established that he was eligible to apply for a debt reduction order. I think it's debt relief order. We provided vouchers for emergency food and fuel support. And our second story is from Anna. Anna is a single mother of 2. Ill health meant she hadn't been able to work for a while, so she contacted us for help with escalating debts. After her rent and other deductions, she had just £182 to live on each month. Our money advice team worked with Anna to put a system in place for managing her debts and helped her secure the support she was entitled to. Following our advice and support, Anna's monthly income increased to over £1,700. Anna and her children are now able to get back on track and have a brighter future. So our future plans include a remote access for majority. I've spoken about that already. But tailored support for the people that can't get their problems solved in that way. And that's our real focus about how do we provide that. Fundraising, we've been not fortunate, we've worked really hard to get the National Lottery fund, but it's 1/3 of what we need. We're putting another grant shortly, and then we're going to have to still fundraise for the rest. And that's to specifically get more paid specialist advice support. But we still rely on funding locally, whether that's from East Herts Council, who have for eons been very supportive of us, town council grants, locality budgets. I'm saying that because we have a county councillor with us. Thank you, locality budget holders. We want to work more closely with the local communities, and we always have done. We've always worked closely, but I think post-COVID, it feels like we're hand in hand with each other, and it feels like we're working properly together, and that thought of competition has just vanished, and we just kind of like, almost you pick up the phone, you can just start talking to people. It feels more like a friendship with many of our partners now. We community access points, so using community spaces, I spoke about Frontline. I'm going to say one more thing about Frontline. Since it launched in January, we've helped 900 people via Frontline. And there are over 100 partners signed up already, and they're people that organisations that support carers, like domestic abuse, mental health and bereavement. So that shows the need, and that's just in East Herts. There's a short film on our website. I'm not going to show it, but you've got to promise to watch it. If you haven't already, it's a nice animated video that we've got done pro bono for us. And it talks about how our service has changed over the years. But actually, it's pretty much what we do doesn't change. What's in our heart hasn't changed. There are contact details, and you can find all that on our website. But I must say that we can't and we don't do this alone. I stand here as the voice of Citizens Advice East Herts, but I am just that. I'm just the voice. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our wonderful volunteers, some of which are here tonight, some of which are online, our paid staff, our trustees who, I really do take them for granted. I have to say they are an amazing bunch of people, and they keep me sane. And our champions and our partners. I'd like to say an extra special thanks to Paul Winspear, who's in here tonight, who's the editor of Bishop Stortford Independent and recently ran the London Marathon on our behalf and raised over £7,000 for us. And I'd just like to give you a certificate of thanks, Paul. It doesn't do justice. Oh, no, come back. You've got to come back. You've got to come back. Monica isn't quick enough on her phone. Right, I'm going to take that with you. Right, should we try again? Do it again. Yeah. No, we should thank you, and we do thank you. It's a marvellous achievement for anybody to run any marathon. The London Marathon is something special, I think, for everybody, but to run it for us is marvellous, and I genuinely thank you. I think we all do.
It was a two-way process. I got something out of it personally as well, so it was a mutually beneficial arrangement.
Will you ever run one again, do you think? Is it sort of every year? Are you now a marathon man?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I go a wobble at the knees at the thought of it, you know. So I'm done. You'll be pleased to know I'm finished. I'm going to hand over. So you think, you know, I was about to say, you thought my presentation was thrilling. Wait till we get to the figures. So I'm going to hand you over now to Gary, who's going to talk you through the figures. So brace yourself.
Okay, if I could just butt in first, if I may, and just ask it's our standard practice to propose a motion to adopt the annual report at the AGM, and Roger is proposing said motion, and I think the name is seconding it, so thank you for doing that. Thank you, Laura, for just giving us
A bit more flavour behind the statistics in it. I mean, it is an important document because we use it for funding purposes and it's a record of what we do. So, but obviously it was sent with the AGM pack as everything else was. Unless anyone's got any queries, if those members amongst us could put their hands up to say they're happy for us to adopt the annual report this year. Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'll take that as passed and adopted. Right, I'll hand over to you, Gary, if I may. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. You have before you in the pack, in addition to the annual report that Laura just went through, the financial statements for the year to March 2021. I wasn't going to go through them in great detail, but I can take any points anyone wishes to raise. But I just wanted to start by saying clearly what a very challenging year we've all experienced, and I wanted to add on to what had already been said. I appreciate, but I just wanted to commend our people that are really at the coalface in terms of both operations and fundraising for the way they've handled such an unprecedented time. I think the report and the statement say it all really, but suffice to say we are satisfied, very satisfied with the position financially as we went into the current year, and we remain so. Some of the reserves at March 21 were already designated for projects which are unfolding currently, and the balance of our reserves gives some stability in the period ahead. That's not to say it's going to be easy, it never is, but we continue to strive to maintain a secure level of reserves and at the same time employing our funds for the benefit of our community. There's one outstanding element to the financial statements I need to point out. Due to changes in pension legislation, the informal arrangement we have had with respect to a historical pension deficit.
It is on, yeah.
Okay.
You didn't think you were going to get manhandled tonight, did you, Gary?
Can't be discreet, can you?
With respect to the historical pension deficit, must now be formalised. We believe we have actioned this at the optimum time, and that the liability will not differ significantly from the reserve we already have in the accounts, but we do await final valuations from actuaries. Income in the financial year, as you will see, was approaching £500,000, and a surplus into 2021 was, in my view, no mean feat. And I do again want to finish by thanking all those who assist and support us, and to everyone within the organisation who made that possible. I will take any queries that anyone has, if you have any, and that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone got any queries for Gary? No, I think we're okay there. Obviously, there's a copy of the financial statements in the pack. Perhaps I'll take that. The next item actually beyond that is to reappoint Price Bailey as independent examiners. So perhaps we can take both of those motions at the same time. Just to say, so Price Bailey have acted on a pro bono basis for us for many years, being our independent examiners, and that involves quite a lot of work. You work closely with them, don't you, Gary? And it's very good of them to continue to do so for another year. So if we could formally note, Neil, that our thanks to them for their past work, and if the members are happy to do so, we can just take these two items. Firstly, to approve and adopt the accounts for the year ending 31st March 2021 as presented by Gary. Those members could just formally do that. Thank you. And also to reappoint Price Bailey for another year as independent examiners. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Just the final bit of business from my point of view. Under our articles of association, every 3 years, each member of the trustee board on a rotational basis has to retire, but then they can formally ask to be re-elected if they wish to do so. I'm delighted to say that the 4 people who have had to retire on a rotational basis this time, being Richard Smith, Christine Gillan, Balu Sese and Gary Kansick, have all agreed to stand again, so thank you all for agreeing to stand again. I think I'll take one vote, if I may, rather than on an individual basis, but if the members could just put their hands up to approve, again, as before, proposed by Roger and seconded by Elaine, to propose that they stay for another 3 years on the board. So thank you again. Okay, so that's all from me on the formal side, and I'll hand back to the chairman.
Thank you. I think Laura's going to introduce Councillor Ken Crofton, who's going to do a closing.
Actually, you do, 'cause I'm not.
So Councillor Ken Crofton is going to do the closing remarks. Thank you, Ken. You're going to need a microphone as well, I think, aren't you?
Thank you. You can take mine. This is a spare one.
Councillor Crofton is member for Walken and for East Herts District Council, and Hertford Rural for Hertford County Council.
Yeah, Hertford, I'm a county councillor. Thank you, Chairman of East Herts Council. So, well, this is the sort of AGM I like to attend. It's the shortest one I think we've ever been.
Can I just put this microphone on you?
Unlike council meetings that go on indefinitely, the people repeating the same thing. I'm not going to repeat the technical side of it because it's astonishing what you're achieving. So thank you, Chairman and Laura, for inviting me. Trustees, and of course we've got Eric Buckmaster here, who's a county councillor, and the Mayor of Bishop Stortford, Keith Warnell. So thank you, and ladies and gentlemen. So that was an interesting meeting, and it's a privilege to be here to listen and to learn what's going on. I until a few weeks ago, I had absolutely no idea. I heard about you, but I didn't know what you did, or the extraordinary amount of work that you did. So I'm aware now of the valuable work Citizens Advice in the East Herts has and is doing to support, not always, but often the more vulnerable members of our society. And to explain my experiences, and for no other reason, I'm fortunate to be a county councillor, I'm a district councillor, I'm chairman of East Herts, and in addition I've been a magistrate for 28 years, and all in this area. And the reason I mention that is that I fully understand the sort of problems this operation deals with. And I understand that the value of the work that you do. The Magistrates' Court is probably the most depressing, as we find that the majority of criminals or alleged criminals or defendants that appear there, their cases are committed by the less educated and generally the poorest members of society. And it tends to be as a result of poor parenting, or in many, many cases, no parenting, which is the saddest thing of all. So, and then they mix with similar people with similar backgrounds, and they seem to lose hope and what they want to try and achieve in life. They don't have those goals been set for them to realise that there's a world out there that they can reach out to. So that's the sadness of it all. But with organisations like this, that helps hugely. So, you know, you don't often see wealthy people in courts. You don't often see educated people in courts. They only appear for motoring offences. like me. Life has become overwhelming. It's becoming really complicated. It used to be so simple, didn't it? Life now is so complicated, particularly for the elderly, society is forcing lawmakers to make legislation, laws, rules, regulations all the time. It's so complex for the elderly, who many don't have access to computers. So again, another help for you. So this is why your services are there, to unravel these complexities. This is why citizen advice is so valued and appreciated in East Hertfordshire by so many people. Thank you all trustees, thank you all the volunteers, thank you for what you do. It's much, much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Crofton, for your kind remarks. That concludes the AGM. I'm looking at James for reassurance here.
Yes, your closing remarks, Tony.
So my closing remarks are really just to introduce Richard Morris, who's going to be our guest speaker tonight. So that's the AGM closed at whatever time it is, Neil. Thank you. Richard's an experienced business leader, an author, and digital community-orientated entrepreneur. He's enjoyed being a pioneer in both Silicon Valley and the UK, building the internet infrastructure and services we use as utilities today. He continues his management consulting work, but wanting to focus more on social impact, he co-founded and runs The Giving Machine, a charity that provides new and easy ways to help causes, supporters and businesses make a difference together. Thank you, Richard. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, and it's been great just to hear all of the amazing things that you guys have achieved. Now, apparently, I'm the entertainment tonight, and I was a little bit concerned to see tomatoes over there, and I've just been checking, I can't see any of them with you. So, obviously, I was going to talk a little bit, and I was asked to talk a little bit about some elements of pandemic, because obviously that's the biggest thing that's happened to us. So, a little bit about me. I got that wig when I did the London Marathon. Actually, hold on, I'm giving the wrong impression. Because unlike Paul, I went to the London Marathon to see someone run, and Alzheimer's Research gave me the wig. So I got to do that. But I helped set up the Giving Machine, which we work with thousands of organisations across the country, and only this month we sent out, and every month we sent money to hundreds of organisations. We sent out another, I think, best part of £10,000. Yellow Lodge is my consulting company, and in the next few days we're launching a Win an Italian House, which is a raffle that all charities, if they want to, across the UK, can actually get a look into the proceeds, because I'm sure we've seen some of those things online, but they tend to only focus on one charity. We want to do it to support all. So that's a little bit about me. So this is, obviously it's a bit light, but this is John Cleese. This is the People's Front of Judea in The Life of Brian. And as I was asked to talk a little bit about the sort of pandemic, I was thinking, well, really, what has the pandemic ever done for us? And of course, if you've seen the film, it's what have the Romans ever done for us? So while they're meeting to complain and perhaps overthrow the Romans, but then you find out actually they've done the aqueduct, they've done education, kept law and order, and so on. So really, I was thinking, okay, what has the pandemic actually given us? What have we learned? Well, before everything started to hit, this is a sort of an allegory of our lives. We had the ups and downs. It was fairly predictable. You know, we knew, and I'm sure looking at this audience, we knew when Love Island was on, right? We knew when we were going to go shopping. If you had kids, you knew when you were going to take them to school. You knew when they were coming home. You knew a lot of things about your life. In fact, you probably knew what the difference between weekdays and weekends. But of course, along comes the pandemic, and of course, suddenly that's the way it is. It's all over the shop, right? And of course, that was a massive shock to us, but it's amazing how quickly, and I thought Laura was saying how quickly we evolved. Because actually, suddenly, they do say, don't they, sort of, was it necessity is the mother of invention? And of course, then we started to say, well, actually, do you know, we can do things. We can do things on Zoom or Teams, whatever it is you're using, and you were saying that you were practicing that. So suddenly we enabled ourselves to carry on doing some of the things that we thought, actually, this will never work. I was in a business group setting, and people say, oh, we'll never work online. Now, of course, we're going back. It's, oh, we don't want to go back. We've got to travel. So it's whatever you do, but we change really quickly. But of course, then we also had another set of vernacular that we started to use. You're on mute, right? No, I can't see you, the camera's not working. And all that sort of stuff. And then you're frozen, hold on, and then repeating yourself. And I think one of the favourite ones is something I call the Zoom gap. And that is the gap between when you've said your goodbyes, but you're still trying to find how to leave the meeting, right? So you've got that awkward little pause between. And of course, as families, we also started using some of this technology. In our family, we have every couple of weeks, and we still do, we have a family quiz. We've all got to do, and what's funny is the same questions, we still ask some of the same questions. You know, what's the largest country by area and small, and we still get them wrong. It's not like we've learned, so we can actually reuse some of the quiz questions from last year. But the fact is, we started to use some of these things to connect to people, potentially even local people, because we couldn't see them because of the pandemic. And of course, we changed the way we shopped. And of course, as we know, there was a big rush to get your slots for delivery, right? So there was, but we changed, so many things changed. And then when we were told you can exercise for 1 hour a day, you've never seen so many people out exercising, right? Just because you were told you could, but you couldn't at other times, we're all out there using our bikes. In fact, the bike shops, I think, had never seen such a rise in bike sales. It was incredible. Now, one of the things that was really interesting, and I thought I wanted to cover a little bit, is that when you actually look at our normal everyday lives, a lot of it is we're doing regular stuff, we're doing habitual stuff. And neurobiologists, cognitive psychologists say that somewhere between 40 and 80 or 90% of the time we spend is in autopilot. We kind of just do what we do, right? And because we know, you think it's easy. Oh, I go down to Asda or Sainsbury's on a Tuesday, that's what we do. I always phone my mum on this day. It's very easy for us to do. Remember to watch Love Island, of course, for this group. But our life is quite routine. But our subconscious brain uses far less, at that side of things, uses far less energy than our conscious brain. So actually, of course, we spend most time in autopilot, because that's our conscious brain saying, well, I want to save energy. I don't want to use the energy. And so what was really interesting in the whole pandemic piece is suddenly all our routines went out the window. We had to think. Everything was difficult, right? Everything. Even just your whole routines. And I jested about the sort of weekday, weekend, but actually it was kind of weird, wasn't it? Because it felt pretty much the same. And so, of course, the subconscious brain that we have and we hand off to autopilot, we know that we have this because it's the sort of thing you see, oh, do you know what, yeah, I'm going to go upstairs. You go upstairs and you've forgotten why you've gone upstairs. It was only 20 seconds ago you started to go upstairs. But it's an example of your conscious brain saying, oh, I know what this is. Hand it off to your autopilot and suddenly your autopilot says, well, I got you to where you want to go. What do you want to do? And you think, oh, I've forgotten already. It's why you start driving down the road and you go down a familiar place, you take the usual right-hand turn, but you didn't want to go right. You want to go left. It's why, and I'll tell you where that's really annoying, is when actually you wanted to go south on the M11 and you've turned north. And that's another 25 minutes of your life you won't get back at least. But it's all of those sorts of things that sort of affect us and how our brain works. And of course, when we were in that sort of side of things, having to think about everything, we're absolutely exhausted because it requires so much more energy when you're out of your routine. It is why when you're on a train journey, going somewhere where you haven't been regularly, you're tired. Why are you so tired? It's only been a train journey, you're sitting down. It's because you're not in autopilot, right? Your brain is working on that. And it's something for us to think about as we went through that. And of course, one of the things that was very interesting and in the conversation or the presentations we've heard is one of the other impacts is when we started becoming more conscious about stuff, we started saying, well, we're looking after each other. We're looking after our neighbours. We're looking after some of our colleagues. We're looking after our family. And we became aware of who essential workers are. to keep our society going. These are things we take for granted, and suddenly when you can't take things for granted, there are big changes. It opens your eyes to different things. But again, as I said, it's exhausting being at that level all the time, because it is very, very tiring. And I suppose, I'm sure, hopefully you saw all of this yourselves, is you're sort of tired. You get to the end of the day, you think, I haven't done a lot, but it's not, I can't do autopilot. But the thing is, though, is we experience more conscious living. You're actually more conscious for things because you had to come out of autopilot. And it's something that we need to think about, not to slip into autopilot and be part of that. We're on autopilot for 80, 90% of our lives. And we can recognize that. We can exercise choice to become better at that side of things. And when you hear the phrase getting back to normal or getting back to that, what it's really saying is, I want to get back to autopilot. And we just need to be aware of that, because that is not real living. It's autopilot. And it's especially, sadly, and I look at my parents, as you get older, you want to be an autopilot, but we consciously need to fight that. And one of my favourite sayings, in fact, my daughter's in the audience, and she'll laugh at this, is be the driver, not the passenger in your own lives. So, just take that opportunity to actually be driving where you want to be, and recognise when you're handing over to your autopilot. And that then then gives you the chance to say, where do you want to go? And I wanted to share with you this slide. So this is a Japanese philosophy of happiness in life. Now, it can be pronounced, I think, ikigai or ikegai. And it's really interesting, because when you actually look at the surveys that go out to people, what's the one thing they want more of in their lives? It comes back consistently. It's happiness. It's the one thing most people want more of their lives. And the one thing that makes people happy, or is consistent when you actually talk to people who are happy, or they survey people that are happy, is giving to others. And of course, that is a key part of what you guys do. And what they basically say is you've got to try and stay in the middle. And the middle is a balance between what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and on this, in their model, it says what you can be paid for. But I would reword that to say what you can be rewarded for. Because, of course, your charity, you have staff, but you also have amazing volunteers. And obviously, you do this because you can be rewarded for that, because you know you're making a difference. And that blend, if you can stay in the middle for most of your lives, that's the sort of root of happiness, if you like. So I've said, the Citizens Advice Bureau, like many other charities, is all about helping people. And part of helping people does make other people, make yourselves happy. And of course, you see that. If you look at how long volunteers stay with you, they stay with you for ages, because it makes them happy. And you can tell in the room. And you've managed to overcome some of the pandemic issues, because look how many people you've served and supported. If anything, if I understood it correctly, you've increased your impact in a time when so many other organisations have not been able to do that. That is phenomenal. And it's like the best of humanity in action, all during a time when actually everything's changed. And not only should you be really proud of yourselves, but keep that mentality of change. Don't fall back into just that's routine and that side of challenge the routine. So really, in summing up, number one, stay conscious. Stay driving the bus that you're in, the car that you're in. Just make sure that you're there, totally engaged, building better communities, that you are supporting the people that you do. Make sure that you review your habits. Recognise when you're on that wheel, that hamster wheel, when you're in autopilot. We all do it, but it's important to challenge that. And I say, be happy and help other people to be happy. And even though I know you're dealing with some people who are in very difficult circumstances, you give them an element of happiness, because, as you said already, you give them hope. And that is a pathway to happiness. But I think the last thing that's really, really important is, just in case it all goes wrong, make sure you've got loads of loo roll, you've got loads of crackers, biscuits, flour, and petrol. So stock up on that as much as you can. And just lastly, I thought one thing I'll leave you with was a quote, this I saw on Twitter, was saying, in 2020, or 2019, if I could just have a week to do nothing and nowhere, I could get this house clean. Or for other people, I could get that book planned, or I could do this or that. But actually, now, no, that wasn't the problem. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Richard, for a very entertaining presentation.
Yeah, no
well,
tomatoes,
job
that
done.
was good.
Yeah. Thank you. That's it. We've finished for this year. Please circulate and enjoy yourselves and
A glass of wine, I think.
have a glass of wine. Yeah. Thank you.